about.
Now, I should tell you a couple of things about that. One, xenophobic is specifically you have a problem with people who are strangers, specifically, from different countries. But he's being interviewed by Cheryl Atkinson. Some of you may not remember her. She is now a reporter, and I think she has a show on a Sinclair media. I don't know if it's, I imagine it's syndicated throughout all the Sinclair. Sinclair, of course, is the right-wing local network, if you will. And she was in the early teens, I guess, 2011, 2012. She was with CBS News, and she got very deep into the Benghazi thing. At times, she claimed that the Obama administration was like taking over her computer. She has in the past suggested that there is a possible link between vaccines and autism. She just to give you a sense of how hardball those questions are. But this is what Donald Trump is doing in terms of the science. And this is what he does in terms of the science retroactively and going forward. We don't know that much about coronavirus, or I should say, we don't know everything there is to know about this. That's why they call it novel COVID-19, because it's new to human beings. We don't know if there's some data suggesting that over the 77 degrees, it becomes a lot harder to travel around. Plenty of data suggested it's harder to get when you're outside. All the scientists anticipate a second wave hitting in the fall, but some also argue like we're still in the first wave. It's just that we're choosing to ignore the 1,500 deaths a day. But understand that this is all a political decision by Donald Trump, driven by his desire, his belief that this is going to help him in the election, driven by the fact that he looks at spread and deaths of the virus. And if you were to look at blue states, ones that Clinton carried by big numbers versus ones that Trump carried by big numbers, less in the red states, of course, because it's less dense. To the extent that there's outbreaks there, they tend to be, and this is the true of blue states too, they tend to be amongst people living in poverty or people with low income who are forced to actually not isolate and semi-quarantine because they need to go out and they need to do their jobs, or they're afraid of getting fired. They need the money. And Trump's calculation is my voters don't care about those people. And so we're just going to go forward as if nothing's happening. And my other constituency, Chamber of Commerce and all these, whoever they are, the Koch brothers, the Mercers, whoever, are encouraging, open up. So that's where we are. Meanwhile, the other constant in our, where are we here? Do we have, he is on the line. Okay, great. All right, well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Zach Carter on his new book. It's a big one. The Price of Peace, Money, Democracy, and the Life of John Maynard Keynes. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome, I believe, back to the program. He is a senior reporter with Huffington Post and the author of The Price of Peace: Money, Democracy, in the Life of John Maynard Keynes. Zach Carter, welcome to the program.
Good to be back, Sam.
So, all right, let's start with the. Let's start just historically from where he is, or maybe we should just, in broad sense for folks, just give us the 60,000 foot view of John Maynard Keynes and how massive a figure he has been, really, in terms of how we perceive our economy, particularly, I think, from the 20s, maybe the 30s, into the really 80s, 90s, across the board. But give us a sense of just where this guy is in terms of how much he has affected, in many respects, our everyday lives.
Sure. I think most of us, or at least most people who learn about John Maynard Keynes, learn about him in Econ 101 courses, where they're told that he's the guy who said governments need to spend money during recessions in order to help lift the economy out of the doldrums. But Keynes was not this sort of deficit therapist guy who worked all his life to try and create a legacy where people talked about how much money you should spend when GDP reaches a certain particularly depressing point. He is, I think, really one of the most important kind of last Enlightenment style thinkers who looked at the world of economics as something that is sort of united and continuous with philosophy, ethics, political theory, the big questions that all of the major thinkers of the Enlightenment, like John Locke, John Stuart Mill, people like this, were concerned with. And when we talk about the economy, even Keynes's most I think virulent critics, particularly on the right, use a sort of framework about talking about the economy that Keynes created. There was no such thing as macroeconomics before John Maynard Keynes came along. The idea of looking at the economy as this social thing that affects everybody rather than a series of atomized individual choices, that was a new way of looking at the world. And he developed that because he thought of economics as something that was not so much about dollars and cents and making equations balance just the right